Hi, I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thanks so much for joining me today at Courageous Journeys. If you've been following along on this adventure, I'm coming to you today from Venice, Italy. It's a beautiful day here, so I thought I would try to do this video outside, hopefully with no distractions. First of all, I want to take an opportunity to really just thank you. Thank all of you who have, whether it's through YouTube or my website, Facebook, provided support and feedback. I really do appreciate each and every one of you who take the time and have the courage to connect with me, asking questions, looking for support or information. I really do appreciate it, so thank you. Today I'm going to talk about some of the hurdles that people have in starting therapy. After my last video where I talked about the first step in being able to heal, I got some feedback from people about, okay, how do you even go to therapy? I'm too nervous, I'm too worried. Lots of different fears about going to therapy and obstacles that keep people from getting there. So I thought I would talk about that a little bit today. One of the biggest fears that people tend to have is that they're going to be judged by the therapist. And while that's a normal fear, it happens because you judge yourself. If you really think about it, you probably judge almost every aspect of who you are and what you do. Therefore, you anticipate and expect that people are going to judge you too. So first of all, know that your fear is coming from your own judgments about yourself. And while I cannot promise you that you won't be judged by your therapist, I can very, very confidently say that if you are to see a therapist who is good at what they do, you will not be judged. And if you see a therapist who really understands sexual abuse, you won't be judged for anything that you might share, no matter what it might be. It could be that you ended up abusing somebody else as a way of coping with your own abuse. It could be that you have committed some type of crime for whatever reason. It could be your sexual fantasies or whatever it may be. But I can very confidently say that if you see somebody who is experienced in sexual abuse, you will not be judged. Another fear that people have is that they're going to have to go into that first session knowing exactly what to do or what to expect. And that's not true either. Your biggest job in this process, especially at the beginning, is showing up. Literally, showing up. That's all you have to do. And that's sometimes the most difficult thing. I can't tell you how many people I've had over the years who will make an appointment and just not show up or cancel right before the appointment because it just feels too overwhelming. So quite literally, just getting to that office and sitting down with the therapist is one of the biggest things and most important things. It's really all I ask of people when they come to see me is that you're willing to show up and be as present as you possibly can. Of course, as time goes on, you need to do a little more than show up, but really it's just about being you. You don't have to pretend to have the answers. It's not your job to have the answers. If you have the answers, you wouldn't need therapy. You don't need to know exactly what you think or feel. It's hard to know sometimes what you think or feel, so it's really just about showing up. Another fear that people have is that they're going to have to go through all the details of their story, particularly in the beginning. And as I said in another video about it not being always about the details, that's really not true either. And for many people, you don't really have to even talk about the abuse for a long time. I've worked with people who haven't shared with me that they were abused until a year in. So it's not something that has to be done immediately. Of course, though, if you want to heal, you do need to be able to disclose that you were abused. Otherwise, the therapist is going to be working to try to resolve issues that aren't resolvable because you're not dealing with the real issue. So that's important to keep in mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go in a lot of details all at once. For example, I've had people do this, and I think it's perfectly reasonable to acknowledge that you were abused, but then don't really talk about it. At least that way the therapist has a framework to think about what might be going on with you. The cost is another fear and issue that people have, and unfortunately it is a reality. Some people just cannot afford a private therapist. But what I will say about that is that, well, two things. One, depending on where you live, you may be able to get low-cost or free services from a community organization. If you live in the U.S., most relatively large communities have crisis centers that provide low-cost or free services, at least for a limited period of time. So it's a great resource to check out. But the other thing that I hear from people quite often, and again, there's no judgment there, but I will often hear people say, I can't afford therapy. I can't afford weekly therapy. Meanwhile, they're taking extravagant vacations. They are coming in with their designer handbags. They have Starbucks in their hand every time they come in. They're talking about private trainers. All these different things that they choose to spend their money on, and that's their choice. There's no judgment about that. But there's no greater investment than your well-being, than your happiness. So if it's not so much that you literally don't have the money, but you don't think that you can spend the money, you might think about how much you spend on some of those other things and see if for a period of time you might be able to reallocate some of those funds. Insurance is an option, certainly, as well. If you have insurance, you may be able to get reimbursed for at least part of the expenses for that. The other thing, too, is that some therapists, while they may not advertise that they offer a reduced fee, they may offer a reduced fee as well. One of the fears that people have, in addition to judgment, so this is a little bit different, is rejection from their therapist. And typically they're afraid of the rejection as a result of judgment. But sometimes if a therapist has to refer you out, if they refer you out because they feel like they're not the right fit for you, it can certainly feel like a personal rejection, and that's really understandable. But sometimes, in fact, it's an ethical obligation that we have. If we feel that we cannot help you in the way that you deserve to be helped, we have an obligation to try to refer you to somebody who may be able to help better than we can. A fear of people finding out is another one, and a therapist, at least in the U.S., I can't speak for anywhere else, but a therapist in the U.S. has to, by law and by their ethical code, keep your sessions confidential. Now, there are some exceptions to that in regards to child abuse, elder abuse, harm to self or others. When I say harm to self, I'm talking about death. Those things do need to be disclosed just for everybody's well-being. But the things that you talk about in therapy are completely confidential. Who you choose to tell that you're in therapy is completely up to you. What you choose to tell about your therapy is completely up to you. Nobody has a right to know that you're in therapy, but you have a right to share with whomever you might choose. So I think those are the biggest fears that people have. Again, I want to stress that you do not need to know what to do, how to fix it, how to resolve it, what steps to take. All you have to do is pick up that phone or send that email and get the process started, because the therapist isn't going to call you out of the blue. You have to make that initial contact. And if you don't know what to say to the person, just say, hi, I'm thinking about coming to therapy. Can you tell me what to do? That's it. Or something as simple as that. You don't need to be much more specific. I remember so many of the phone calls that I had over the years where people would make that first contact and sometimes even hang up on me when I answered the phone because they didn't expect an answer. But kind of stutter over themselves because they really don't know what to say. They're afraid of saying the wrong thing. There really isn't anything wrong that you can say. It's just about making that contact, saying, hi, can I get some information? Hi, I'm thinking about therapy. I don't know what to do. Could you tell me how to start this process? whatever it may be. So thanks for joining me, and I will look forward to seeing you next time.